The second of Epoch's imports from the US, and the last one, was Miner 2049er, a game that was very significant back in the early days of computers, but has mostly been forgotten since then. Miner 2049er was one of the first action games created specifically for computers, and while you can see the arcade influences on it, it is an original game. It's not just a clone of something that was already popular. That was something that was incredibly uncommon for action games on computers in the early 80s. And skipping ahead to the point, the Super Cassette Vision version is a really good port of Miner 2049er. I have some issues with it due to the Cassette Vision's controllers, but considering that the only version that's this good that was available back then was for the Atari 5200, the Cassette Vision's controllers don't really look that bad in comparison. The concept of Miner 2049er, a miner in the distant year of 2049 who is surveying an area for uranium. But the uranium mine is full of mutants, and Bob is going to have to avoid them as he does his survey. Miner 2049er has 10 stages, and your goal on all the levels is to walk over every single inch of the terrain. Well, except the very bottom of the screen. For some reason that doesn't count. Walking on a platform will fill it in, letting you know that you've been there. There's a lot of mining equipment scattered around, and if Bob collects any of that, then the mutants will change color, and he can knock them out by walking on top of them. That effect only lasts a few seconds, and unfortunately, there's no real tell for when they're going to change back. One of the key strategies in Miner 2049er is knocking out all of those enemies, and the timing can be tight to reach some of them. You'll still want to do it though, since a lot of the stages involve backtracking, sometimes inadvertently, and getting those mutants out of the way will save you some precious time. The stages are on time limits, and if that runs out, then you have to start all over again. Bounty Bob's key method for getting around stages is jumping. Both buttons on the controller jump, and your jump gets a pretty good distance and height. You'll have to use it to scale up things. Like a lot of the platformers from the very early days, Bounty Bob can't fall forever. If he falls more than about twice his height, then he'll die. However, a lot of stages require that you fall onto platforms in order to reach them. So you'll have to get an understanding of exactly how far you can push it if you're going to complete some of these stages. Almost all of the stages have some kind of mining equipment as something to interact with in order to get around. Initially, it will be slides. Step above those and you'll slide to the bottom. You do have to walk on the spot on top of the slide in order to mark it off. In some cases, it means you're going to have to make multiple trips across the platform. Just remember you can always jump over the top of the slide. Past that, the obstacles you get become much more complicated. Okay, the elevator isn't horrible. You stand next to it and it goes up to your floor, and then you steer it up and down. Anyone can figure that out. The scissor lift, on the other hand, is the one stage where the control scheme changes. On this level, the left-hand button doesn't jump. Instead, if you're on top of the lift, and then hold down the left-hand button, you drive it rather than move Bounty Bob. You can steer it left and right, and raise and lower the platform. The gimmick on the final stage is especially confusing. The numbers on the left-hand side are the explosive charges that you're loading into the cannon at the bottom. And you need to carry just enough explosives into it to launch Bob up to a platform where he needs to explore. Too little and you'll fall down and die. Too much and you slam your head into the ceiling and die. It'll take a bit of experimentation to get this one right. One thing that will help you in this game is that you are able to choose what level to start at. After you choose your difficulty level, hit enter on the console's select pad, and then punch in what stage you'd like to start at. For those difficulty levels, the key difference is that professional level moves about twice as fast as amateur. I gotta say, I think Miner 2049er is a pretty good game. It's not perfect. I really hate that stage that has 5 slides funneling together, for example. But you can see how it brings together a whole bunch of arcade influences from the early 80s and mixes them into something new. And the Super Cassette Vision version's not a bad way to play it. There have been follow-ups to the game over the years, but they were all too late to really reach the Super Cassette Vision. I think this is the best Super Cassette Vision game that I've seen so far. It's a well-designed, fun, snappy little arcade-style game. There's even a ton of variety to it thanks to having 10 stages. It wasn't going to wow anybody once Super Mario Bros. Hit in a few months. But at that moment in the first half of 1985, I'd say it was the best platform game on any home console in Japan. And unfortunately, it was badly overlooked since the Super Cassette Vision was the third place console.